The fog in Larkspur Hollow never quite lifted, not even in the middle of the day. It clung to the branches like cobwebs, and the air always smelled faintly of pine sap and damp earth. To locals, the place was cursed ground, spoken of in mutters over front porch coffee or between prayers at Sunday service. But to the group of out-of-towners from Charleston, it was the perfect backdrop for their podcast. Appalachia Unbound. They called it. A passion project by four friends who had grown bored of mainstream horror and wanted to chase the real thing. Anna, the unofficial leader, had grown up with her grandmother's ghost stories. Calvin was the tech guy, always lugging cameras and audio gear. Tasha, bold and skeptical, played the role of on-air devil's advocate. And then there was Mason, quiet, observant, always writing in his journal. They arrived late in the afternoon, their van rattling down the gravel road as sunlight broke through shifting clouds. The trail into the hollow wasn't marked on modern maps, but Anna had tracked it through fragments of a WPA survey and a half-century-old local almanac. The town they passed on the way, Wilton's Rest, looked barely alive, but an old gas station attendant had warned them without smiling. "Don't follow the light," he said simply, pumping their gas. They'd laughed about it all the way to the trailhead. Now, standing at the edge of the tree line, Anna held up her phone to record a quick intro. "We're here at Larkspur Hollow, somewhere between forgotten and forbidden," she said, gesturing toward the tangled path. "Locals say a ghost walks here at night, holding a lantern, looking for something, or someone. We're going to spend the next 3 nights finding out if there's any truth to it." Tasha rolled her eyes. "Or we'll find raccoons and dehydration. Either way." Mason didn't say anything. His gaze was fixed on something further in, a dark shape that looked like an old stone wall, half collapsed under ivy. A chill slipped through him, but he didn't mention it. They hiked in, backpacks full of gear and dried food. The forest swallowed the light quickly. By the time they found a clearing, flat enough to pitch their tents, the sky had turned a dull steel gray. Calvin set up the microphone boom while Tasha joked about bears. Anna took still shots of the surroundings. Mason wandered to the edge of the trees, scribbling down notes about the feeling in the air. He'd grown up with forests, but this one felt too still, like it was listening. That night, they built a small fire and recorded their first segment. They talked about the local legend, a man who had once deserted the Confederate Army, fled into the mountains, and was cursed for abandoning both sides. He was said to appear to the lost or the guilty, carrying a lantern that led wanderers deeper into the dark. "You'd think if he really existed, someone would have caught it on tape by now," Tasha said, leaning back on her elbows. "Maybe they did," Anna replied, "but didn't make it out to upload it." They all laughed, except Mason, who stared into the woods. He thought he saw something, just a shimmer, like firelight reflected on water, but when he blinked, it was gone. They went to bed with the fire reduced to embers and the forest whispering around them. Somewhere in the trees, a branch cracked. No one moved. Another crack. Then nothing. In the distance, faint and flickering, a light appeared, yellow, like a candle, but gone before Mason could be sure. He sat up in his sleeping bag, heart pounding, but he said nothing. The next morning dawned damp and gray. Fog hung low in the clearing, wrapping around the tents like ghostly fingers. The fire pit was cold, though Calvin swore he'd stoked it before bed. None of them had slept well, but no one admitted it, not even Mason, who'd lain awake until sunrise, listening. As they ate protein bars and sipped instant coffee, Anna reviewed the audio files on her laptop. She froze. "Guys, listen to this," she said, gesturing them over. It was a clip from the night before, around 2:41 a.m., the time when Mason had seen the light. At first, only the usual nighttime sounds, insects, wind, a distant owl, then faint footsteps, not wildlife, human, 1, 2, 3, crunching through leaves, slow and steady. Then a voice, barely a whisper, so soft it might have been wind, but unmistakably human. "Which way? Is home?" They stared at each other. Calvin turned pale. "None of us were up at that time, right?" Anna shook her head. "No, my tent zipper never moved. You would have heard it." Tasha was quiet now, lips pressed tight. Mason looked out toward the tree line again. "Could be someone messing with us. Or something else." They spent the morning retracing their steps from yesterday. Mason took them to the half-collapsed stone wall he'd seen on arrival. It was older than it looked, weathered, worn with lichen. Nearby, they found the remains of what looked like a hearth buried under vines and earth. Anna's eyes lit up. This might be it. The old homestead. Some records say the Lantern Man was a deserter who died trying to get home. She pulled out a field recorder and began narrating. We've just discovered what may be the remnants of the original cabin belonging to. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed through the trees. They all flinched. Tasha raised her phone, trying to pinpoint the sound. Something fell. They followed the noise through thick underbrush until they found the source. A tree had split down the middle, its trunk blackened as though from fire. But there had been no lightning, no fire. Calvin knelt and brushed his fingers along the burn. It's warm. Behind them, a whisper rose, not from any one direction, but from the air itself. Turn. Back. The wind kicked up, scattering leaves. Anna's equipment squealed with feedback before cutting out. Her screen went black. They ran? No one said it, but they ran. Back in the clearing, they gathered around the dying fire and tried to make sense of it. Tasha, for once, didn't have a joke. Calvin sat with his headphones on, re-listening to the morning's recordings. Mason sat apart from the group, writing furiously. Anna tried to stay logical. This could still be a prank, locals trying to scare outsiders. Maybe there's a speaker in the trees or something. Calvin shook his head. The heat on that tree wasn't fake, and I've isolated the whisper. It has no point of origin. It's on multiple channels at once. That's not possible with our equipment. As the sun sank, the forest grew darker than it should have. They decided not to record that night, not until they could regroup and make sense of what was happening. But even in silence, something followed. They heard the crunch of leaves, soft footsteps circling the tents. Once, a light passed across the canvas of Mason's tent, like a lantern swinging slowly by. He held his breath. The voice came again, just inches from his head. Which way is home? He didn't sleep. By sunrise, Mason looked hollow-eyed and stricken. He didn't speak as the group gathered for breakfast. He just stared into the woods, jaw tight, one knee bouncing nervously. Anna handed him a mug of lukewarm coffee. He barely noticed. I think we should leave, Tasha said quietly. This isn't fun anymore. Anna hesitated. She wanted to agree. Everything in her screamed, get out. But she also couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the edge of discovering something monumental. The footage, the whispers, the burned tree. It was unlike anything they'd ever encountered. We've come too far to just walk away, she said, though her voice lacked its usual confidence. Let's give it one more day, just one. We document everything, and then we leave. No one really agreed, but no one protested either. They decided to explore deeper that day, beyond the stone ruins, into the oldest part of the forest. The trees there were thicker, twisted as if in pain, their branches like fingers frozen mid-scream. The sun barely filtered through the canopy. It was silent. Too silent. An hour in, they found something none of them could explain, a crude circle of stones surrounding a shallow depression in the earth. In the center stood a single wooden post, wrapped in rusted barbed wire. Nailed to it was a tin lantern, battered, half melted, but unmistakably old. Anna's breath caught. This has to be where it started. Mason knelt beside the stones. It's like a grave, he said. Or a warning. Tasha wandered a few steps away. Guys, they turned. She was standing at the edge of another depression, but this one was different. It was square, like a foundation, and inside it, barely visible under a layer of moss and earth, were dozens of charred bones. Human bones. The silence shattered. A low, rattling breath echoed from the woods around them. Calvin raised his camera, scanning the tree line. Did you hear that? The breath came again, closer, heavier, and then they saw him, a shape just beyond the trees. Not fully visible, only the faint outline of a man, impossibly tall, his face hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat. In his hand, the lantern. It didn't emit light, it absorbed it. The world dimmed as he stepped forward. Tasha screamed, "Run!" They bolted. Branches clawed at their skin, roots tripped them. The trees seemed to move, to close in, as if guiding them deeper. Mason turned back once, and wished he hadn't. The lantern man was behind them, gliding, not running. His movements slow but inevitable, like a tide pulling them under. They didn't stop until they reached the edge of the clearing. Only then did the presence lift. But the damage was done. Calvin sat with his head in his hands, muttering to himself. Tasha refused to leave her tent. Mason had a long scratch across his chest, 3 thin lines, red and fresh, though nothing had touched him. Anna reviewed the footage from Calvin's camera. There was nothing there. The lantern man didn't appear on film. Only the sound remained. The breath, the whispers. The phrase again, distorted and desperate. "Which way is home?" Anna stood up. "We're leaving, now." No one argued. They packed in tense silence, the mood grim. No one dared speak of what they'd seen, or not seen. The footage proved nothing. The scratches, the whispers, the shadow in the trees, it all vanished under daylight, like a bad dream fading upon waking. But none of them felt awake. They felt trapped in some liminal space, some between, no longer part of the outside world, yet not fully consumed by the hollow either. By noon, they were ready to hike back, except the trail was gone. Anna stared at her GPS. It's saying we're nowhere." "What do you mean, nowhere?" Calvin snapped. "I mean it's blank, like the device just gave up." Tasha spun around in a slow circle, panic rising. "It was right there yesterday. We followed the blue markers. Where the hell are they?" The blue trail blazes, painted every few trees were missing, replaced by something else, deep red slashes, jagged, as if painted in blood. Mason said what none of them wanted to. "It's guiding us." "Who is?" Anna asked, though she knew the answer. He didn't say. They followed the red marks. What choice did they have? The forest changed around them as they walked. Trees leaned in closer. The light turned dusky, even though it was midday. A low hum vibrated beneath the ground, like a power line singing below the soil. They passed a tree that had faces carved into its trunk, twisting, screaming faces, mouths gaping, some crudely crossed out with thick black X's. Tasha covered her eyes. "No more," she whispered. "No more." They pressed on. Hours passed. The sun refused to move. They were being stretched, suspended in some artificial loop of time. And then they reached it. A clearing they had already been through. The foundation, the stones, the barbed wire. Anna's stomach dropped. "We've been walking in a circle." "No," Mason said. "It's been walking us in a circle." The lantern man stood at the edge of the clearing again, still, watching. No breath this time, no approach, just presence. And in his other hand, something new. Anna's notebook, the one she'd left zipped in her backpack. He lifted it slowly, opened it. Pages fluttered wildly, caught in a wind no one could feel. And then it stopped on a blank page, and words appeared, scrawled in thick, jagged handwriting. "You came to tell my story." The group froze. "Now you're part of it." The words bled across the page like ink soaking into flesh. Anna stepped back. Tasha dropped to her knees, sobbing. "Please, please let us go." The lantern man raised his head. A face this time, pale, stretched, eyeless. And then, flames. The trees lit up in a circle around them, controlled, contained, a ring of fire as if fencing them in. The heat didn't burn, it didn't even crackle. It just existed, like a memory relived rather than a present danger. Anna's notebook ignited in her bag, and from the woods came whispers. Thousands of voices. Children, women, men, repeating a single question. Which way is home? The lantern man turned and walked into the flames. The fire parted for him, and then it vanished. So did he. The forest was still again. The group stood in the center of the scorched ring, surrounded by untouched green. And then, from behind them, came a new sound. Footsteps, not one pair. Many. The footsteps came steadily, crushing dead leaves and twigs underfoot, too uniform, too synchronized to be anything but unnatural. Anna turned first, heart hammering in her ears. Emerging from between the trees were figures. Dozens of them. Pale, dirt-smeared, their movements stiff like broken marionettes pulled by invisible strings. They wore old-fashioned clothes, overalls, gingham dresses, tattered nightgowns, Civil War jackets, miners' boots, faces hollow, eyes gone, the missing, the lost, the cursed. Tasha let out a choked sob. "Oh my God, those are the names from the ledger." Each figure moved slowly toward them, not with hostility, but with intent, like they had waited for this moment across decades of silence. Anna backed away instinctively until she bumped into Mason. He whispered, "They're not trying to hurt us. I don't think they even know what they are anymore." The whispers returned, not in the trees this time, but from the figures themselves. Breathless voices all in unison repeating the same question. Which way is home? They formed a circle around the group, not closing in, just enclosing. A prison made of memory. One woman stepped forward, her hair tangled with roots, her wedding dress burned along the edges, a black hole where her left eye should have been. She raised her hand and pointed. Not at the group, but through them, behind them, toward the woods. A path had appeared. No trees, no brush, just a clean dirt trail lined with stones, the edges impossibly straight, as if cut into the forest by design. Anna looked back at the woman, but she was already fading, her form dissolving into ash, blowing away on a wind that hadn't existed seconds before. One by one, the other apparitions followed, vanishing into air, their whispers trailing off until only the rustling leaves remained. The group stood in silence. Then Mason spoke. "That's our only chance." Calvin hesitated. "How do we know this isn't just another trap?" Anna looked at the path. "We don't, but staying here, we become them." One by one, they stepped onto the trail. The air changed the moment their feet hit the stones. Cooler, realer, as if the forest had released its grip just a little. For the first time in what felt like days, sunlight actually moved, shifting through the trees as clouds passed. They walked. No red slashes on trees, no faces in bark. Just the sound of their breathing and the occasional cry of distant birds. And then, something different. Laughter. Soft, innocent, a child. They stopped. The sound came from the trees on the left. Tasha's eyes widened. "That sounds like Sarah." "No," Anna said firmly. "We don't go off the path." But then the voice came again. "Mommy?" It was Sarah's voice. Tasha trembled. "I have to." Anna grabbed her wrist. "That's not your daughter." "But what if it's never your daughter?" The woods had learned their grief, their guilt, their softest spots. It used them. They moved on. As the trail curved gently through the trees, something appeared ahead. A structure, gray, angular, a small cabin, newer than the ruins, maybe 1950s. Untouched, no overgrowth. It stood alone in a clearing, pristine and wrong. Anna stopped cold. "That's not on any map," Mason muttered. "I think this is the map now." As they approached, the door creaked open. No wind, no one inside. Just that door, welcoming them. A thunderous crash erupted from the direction of the barn. The noise echoed through the woods, and everyone at the table froze. Emmett stood up so quickly, his chair toppled backward. Clara reached for Oliver instinctively, pulling him close. Jorah clutched a rusted lantern from the windowsill, lit it, and motioned for everyone to stay inside. "Stay here," he barked, grabbing his shotgun from beside the door. "No, you're not going alone," Emmett said, already pulling on his boots. Clara stood, but Jorah shook his head. "You need to protect Oliver. If anything happens..." Clara nodded reluctantly, though her eyes were wet with fear. Emmett and Jorah stepped into the thick night air, the wind sharp with the scent of ozone and something fouler, like turned earth and rot. The lantern light flickered in the gusts as they made their way through the wet grass toward the barn, its silhouette barely visible against the blackened tree line. As they approached, they saw the barn door swinging wide open, creaking on its rusted hinges. Something had broken the latch clean off. "I locked that myself," Emmett whispered, "right before dinner." Jorah raised the lantern. Its amber light spilled across the threshold of the barn, and what lay inside turned their blood to ice. The goats were gone. Not slaughtered. Gone. Only blood streaks and hoof prints remained. And in the center of the barn floor, a perfectly circular burn mark, blackened as if scorched by lightning. "What the hell?" Emmett began when suddenly they heard a sound behind them, whispering, low, rasping, like dozens of dry tongues licking prayers into the wind. They spun around. The woods were completely still. No wind, no animals, no sounds save for that whispering. But then they saw them. Eyes, dozens of them, glowing faintly amber from the darkness of the tree line. Small, low to the ground. They moved like wolves, but the shapes, they weren't right. Too long, too many joints, too fluid. "Back to the house," Jorah said urgently. They ran. The shadows moved with them, on all sides now. The whispering grew louder, more frantic. Shapes darted just out of view, faster than anything natural. Emmett screamed as something swiped at him, shredding his jacket and drawing blood from his shoulder. They reached the porch, barreling through the front door as Clara locked it behind them. Oliver was crying, clutching a wooden crucifix he'd found in the kitchen drawer. "What's out there?" Clara cried. "We don't know," Emmett panted, his hand pressed to his bleeding arm. "But they're watching us, and they're waiting." That night, no one slept. They took turns watching the windows. The whispering didn't stop. It never stopped. It was as though the woods had come alive, and whatever curse lingered over the Hollow Man's land had returned, with teeth. At dawn, the whispering ceased. But something worse awaited them in the morning. Emmett, going to fetch more water from the well, screamed loud enough to bring everyone running. At the base of the well lay a pile of bones. Goat bones, mostly. But near the top of the pile, half buried in bloodied leaves, was a human skull, a small one, child-sized, still wearing a rotting green ribbon. Clara collapsed. Emmett fell to his knees. Jorah whispered, "Avery." And then, from somewhere just beyond the tree line, a little girl's laugh echoed softly. Familiar, wrong. They weren't dealing with just a haunting. They were inside something ancient, something hungry. And it had finally noticed them. The phone rang again that night at precisely 3:12 a.m. Cassandra awoke in a cold sweat, heart pounding like hooves on the hollow ground. She had begun sleeping with the landline unplugged, but it still rang. Every night. Same time. Same guttural static. Same whispering that seemed less like a voice and more like something scratching at the inside of her skull. This time, she didn't pick it up. She crept out of bed, wrapped in the same cardigan she hadn't taken off in days, and stepped into the hallway. The farmhouse was utterly still, except for the occasional creak of old timber settling in the night. Yet something about the silence felt watched, like someone or something was waiting for her to notice it. The moment she crossed the threshold into the kitchen, the motion-activated porch light flicked on. She froze. It wasn't windy. No animals were outside. At least, no normal ones. She moved toward the window slowly, carefully. Outside, the yard was bathed in cold white light, empty, except for the woman. She stood by the tree line, dressed in the same tattered black morning gown from Cassandra's vision, her long silver hair stirring gently despite the still air. Her back was turned. But Cassandra could see her spine, prominent, unnatural, wrong. The woman was barefoot, and her feet weren't quite touching the ground. Cassandra's breath caught in her throat. Then the woman turned. But she had no face, just skin, stretched over where eyes and a mouth should have been, like it had been stitched shut by God himself. Yet Cassandra felt the woman staring into her, smiling somewhere behind that veil of flesh. She stepped back from the window, tripped over the rug, and landed hard on the floor. When she scrambled up and looked again, gone. The light on the porch flickered, then died. The next morning, she found 3 sets of muddy footprints on the porch, barefoot, narrow, and impossibly long. They trailed off into the woods behind the house. In town, she went straight to the archives. The librarian, a brittle woman named Eunice May, recognized her instantly. "You look just like her," she muttered, eyes narrowed. "Like who?" Eunice hesitated. "Margaret Cordell, the widow of Willow's End." The name felt like a nail driven through Cassandra's spine. "That's the name of my grandmother. My mother never talked about her." She wouldn't. No one did. Margaret lost her husband and her 2 sons in our that burned the old tobacco barn to the ground. They found them blackened and twisted. But Margaret, she walked out unburned. Not a scratch. Just stared at the flames with a smile. People said she was cursed. Said she'd struck some kind of deal. Cassandra listened in stunned silence as Eunice rifled through the local records and unearthed a brittle-lapped yellowed newspaper from 1963. The headline read, "Widow watches as family perishes in flames, refuses to speak to authorities." A grainy photo showed the same woman from Cassandra's vision. Pale, gaunt, eyes like 2 black pits in a snow-white face. Margaret Cordell, her own blood. "She never left the house after that," Eunice whispered. "Some say she still hasn't." Back at the farmhouse, Cassandra dug through the attic and found the trunk again. This time, she pried it open fully. Inside was a bundle of letters, written in an elegant, trembling hand. Most were addressed to Mother, and the ink was stained with dried tears, or something darker. But one letter was different. It was written on thick parchment, sealed in red wax. There was no address, just a name. She tore it open, hands shaking. Inside, a single line written in what looked like dried blood. "You were born where the veil is thinnest. We are never truly gone. We are only waiting." That night, she dreamt of fire again. But this time it wasn't her burning. It was them. The faceless family, reaching from the smoke, beckoning, calling her home. Cassandra woke up gasping, the taste of ash in her mouth. The sheets were soaked with sweat. The air in the room smelled faintly of something scorched, something old and rotten, like burned leather left in the rain. She staggered to the bathroom sink, turned on the faucet, and splashed cold water on her face. But when she looked into the mirror, she froze. There was someone standing behind her, not in the room. In the reflection, a small boy, no older than 6, with coal-black eyes and a jaw that hung slightly open, as if broken. His skin was too pale, too stretched. He was staring directly into the mirror, at her. She turned in a flash. The room was empty. When she looked back at the mirror, it was normal again. Her face, drawn and tired. No child, no shadow, just the buzzing of the old light bulb overhead. The next day, she called the only person left from her mother's side of the family, her great-uncle Abram. He lived in a care facility 2 towns over. She hadn't seen him since childhood. He refused to speak on the phone, so she made the trip herself. He was waiting in the sunroom, his body frail but his eyes sharp, alert in a way that unnerved her. "You opened the box, didn't you?" he said, even before she sat down. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. "They've seen you now," he said. "You called them." "What are they?" Cassandra whispered. Abram leaned forward. "They're the tethered." Bound to the land by Margaret's grief and rage, she couldn't let them go, so she kept calling them back, over and over, until the land itself remembered their names better than it remembered the seasons. He paused, breathing shallow. "She made a deal with something in the woods," he continued. "Something old. It gave her what she asked, the illusion of her family. But not them, never them, just hollow echoes, revenants, puppets. I've seen them," Cassandra said, her voice barely audible. "Then it's already begun." That night, she returned to the farmhouse. Every light was on when she pulled into the driveway. She hadn't left them that way. She approached slowly, keys clenched tight between her fingers. Inside, the house was still. Silent. Not the warm kind of stillness, but the kind that precedes a scream. She stepped into the living room and found all the family photos rearranged. Every frame, every picture. Her face had been scratched out. Not just once, but replaced by the face of Margaret. Grinning. Eyes hollow. Cassandra backed away slowly, her breath catching in her chest. The lights flickered and then went out. Complete darkness swallowed the house, and in that moment, she heard the slow, deliberate sound of breathing behind her. Not human, not animal, deep, wet, and impossibly close. She turned and saw the boy again, this time standing inches from her. His mouth opened, and out came a voice that wasn't his. "Come home, Cassandra. Come back to the fire." He lunged. Everything went black. She woke up on the cold floor of the barn, her head pounding and wrists scraped. Dried blood had crusted along her temple. The boy was gone. For a few disoriented seconds, she couldn't remember where she was, or why. The air smelled like rotting hay and rusted iron. Moonlight streamed through the slats above, striping the space in pale silver. Then it came rushing back. The boy, the mirror, the voice, the whisper. "Come back to the fire." She sat up, body trembling. Her phone was missing. So were her car keys. She checked her pockets, the barn floor, even the empty stall behind her. Nothing. She pushed the doors open and stepped into the yard. It was dead silent. Too silent. Not the quiet of night, but the suffocating hush of something waiting. The house loomed before her like a corpse. The windows were dark, except for one, her mother's old bedroom upstairs. A faint amber glow flickered behind the curtains. A candle? No. Fire. She sprinted across the overgrown grass, heart pounding against her ribs. When she reached the porch, the front door was already open, just slightly. Just enough. Inside, the air shimmered with heat. She moved through the foyer, past the living room where all the furniture had been upended, toward the staircase. As she placed a foot on the bottom step, she noticed something carved into the wall beside it. Not scratched. Etched. Dozens of names. Overlapping, crisscrossed, like something trying to write its memory into the house. Her fingers brushed over the letters. Thomas, Elsie, Margaret, James, Cassandra. Her name, repeated over and over until the wall looked like it had been crying it out for years. She climbed the stairs slowly. Each step creaked louder than the last, though she tried to tread lightly. The firelight grew brighter with every floorboard she crossed, but it wasn't warm. It wasn't inviting. It was the color of burning bones. She reached the door, the one that led to her mother's room. The knob was warm, too warm, but she turned it anyway, pushed the door open, and stepped inside. The bed was made just as she remembered. The dresser still held the old porcelain dolls her mother collected. The mirror above it was cracked, but not broken. And sitting in the center of the room, legs crossed on the floor, surrounded by a circle of candles, was her mother. Only, it wasn't her mother. The face was wrong, the mouth too wide, the eyes too still. The voice that came from it was soft, melodic. "Did you miss me, Cassie?" Cassandra froze. "You're not her." The thing smiled. "But I remember her. I remember you, too. You used to cry in this room, in that corner. Do you remember why?" Cassandra couldn't speak. The thing stood up. "Because you saw me back then. Just a glimpse, in the mirror. And your mother said it was just a bad dream." It took a step forward. The candles dimmed, as if sucking in their own flames. "She lied. She knew. She made the deal. And now, sweet girl, so have you." Cassandra backed away, but the door slammed shut behind her. "Where do you think you're going? You came all this way, back to Willow's End, just like she said you would." "Who?" The thing tilted its head. "Margaret." The name cracked the air like thunder. The mirror on the wall shattered without warning. The flames flared violently, turning blue for a moment, and in their glow, Cassandra saw the faces behind the thing wearing her mother's skin. Dozens, all floating in the darkness of the room. Children, adults, all lifeless-eyed, all watching, all waiting. "You belong to the land now," it whispered, "and the land remembers its dead." The floor beneath her feet creaked, groaned, and split. A jagged line tore across the wood, revealing black earth beneath. Then she fell. Through the floor, through time, through memory, through Willow's End itself. She landed hard on damp soil, the wind knocked from her lungs. Above her, the room she'd fallen from had vanished, replaced now by a canopy of gnarled trees and a violet-gray sky. The forest was wrong, twisted, timeless. There were no stars, no sound, just her shallow breath and the hum of something ancient watching. Cassandra sat up, knees muddy and bleeding, and saw she was in a hollow clearing surrounded by stones. They weren't arranged naturally. No, these were deliberate. A circle, an altar. Some of the stones bore carvings, glyphs that pulsed faintly as though still warm from ritual. And in the center of the clearing stood the boy, the same one from the road. But his eyes were now pitch black, reflecting the world like ink. He didn't smile this time. He only lifted his hand and pointed behind her. She turned and saw them, the faces from the room, not floating now, but walking. Stepping from the trees in complete silence, eyes vacant, mouths stitched shut with shadow. Among them, she recognized her mother's real face. Hollow, sad. She stepped back, heart thrashing. "What do you want from me?" The boy finally spoke, but the voice that came out was dozens layered together. Men, women, children, pleading, whispering, commanding all at once. "We want to be remembered." Suddenly her mind filled with images, the history of Willow's End. The land soaked in secrets, deals made in desperation, children offered, names erased, a curse born from grief, passed like rot through the generations. Her mother had tried to run, but the land never forgot. Cassandra clutched her head, screaming, and then the wind changed. A low, rhythmic drumming began somewhere deep in the woods, and with it came a faint glow, golden, pure, like fireflies rising from the roots. The dead hesitated. A voice echoed across the clearing, soft yet powerful. "Cassie, come to me." It was her grandmother's voice. Margaret, not the demon she'd seen earlier. The real Margaret. A woman stepped from the trees, wrapped in a shawl made of thorns and ivy, eyes luminous. She held a lantern glowing like a miniature sun. "You're not bound to this," she said, "but if you stay, the curse ends here." Cassandra shook her head, confused. "What do you mean?" The woman stepped closer. "The land must have a keeper, one who remembers, one who guards the line between the living and the forgotten." The faces stared at her, waiting. Cassandra's voice cracked. "I don't want this." "I didn't either," Margaret said, setting the lantern at Cassandra's feet. "But someone must carry the name, or the curse spreads." The light grew. The dead began to cry without sound, the shadows hissing as they pulled back. Cassie looked down at the lantern, then at the boy, who was now just a child again, fragile, lost. Her heart broke. Slowly, she reached for the light, and when her fingers touched it, it rushed into her. Every memory, every death, every forgotten soul of Willow's End now living inside her. The curse didn't lift. It settled. The forest faded. The clearing dissolved. And Cassandra awoke on the front porch of the farmhouse. It was morning. The sun had risen, and in the window above, her mother's face watched, not with malice but peace. Cassandra stood, walked to the gate, and looked back once. The trees bowed slightly in the wind. She whispered, "I remember." then turned and left. But Willow's End watched her go and smiled.